Okay, let's get started. So hello, everyone, and welcome to CocoaHeads for June 2020, our third remote one for the year. Just before I keep going, just checking I can be heard okay, Nikki and Carl?
All good.
Yep, cool. All right. Just don't want to do that thing where I talk for too long before realizing. All right. So to begin this evening, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I know we might not all be gathering on land of the Gadigal people tonight, but that is where we traditionally hold CocoaHeads when we gather in the Sydney CBD. So that's where the acknowledgement of country happens normally. So a little bit of housekeeping before we begin this evening. Your hosts are myself, I'm Zach, Nikki, and Carl, who are also on the call.
Hi guys.
Hey,
welcome to CocoaHeads.
Evening, everybody.
As usual, a big thank you to our sponsors who help cover our costs and make nights like this possible. So we've got Billu, Academy, and Atlassian. Normally Atlassian host us in their offices, but obviously not the case for the last few months, but we still thank them for their support during this time. So just a reminder that Sydney CocoaHeads has a code of conduct. You can read the code of conduct in full on our website. We've got the full URL there on the slide in front. But the code of conduct boils down to sort of 3 points, the 3 things you can take away from it. So there's be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware. I know we're not meeting in person, but the code of conduct still definitely applies to our online meetup and also the Slack community, which I'll talk a little bit more about soon. If you feel that there's any violations of the code of conduct or would like to discuss anything to do with the code of conduct or somebody else's behavior, please just reach out to myself, Carl, or Nikki, and we'd be happy to address your concern. So Sydney CocoaHeads has a Slack community. Feel free to join. The link's there. The link was on the opening slide as well for tonight. Everyone's welcome to join. It's not just for iOS devs in Sydney. And it's a place where we can all sort of hang out and chat and discuss iOS dev things or other general things that you'd like to talk about from a development perspective or meetups or anything like that. So feel free to join. There's a few channels for various interests. And it's also where most of the discussion for our meetup takes place on the night. So there's a meetup channel in there at the moment. That's quite active at the moment. So worth checking out if you'd like to participate on the Slack. So normally when we meet in person, we do a nice big welcome to first-time attendees, get them to stand up, wave their hands, and everyone gives them a clap. Obviously can't do that, but I still just did want to say welcome if you're tuning into CocoaHeads for the first time tonight. Hopefully we've got a bunch of new faces, especially given that it's not happening in person and we can have people from all around the world. I did get a message from somebody who was quite excited to tune in, I believe from the UK, and they were saying it was something ridiculous like 3:30 in the morning where they are. So hopefully they're watching and enjoying, and hopefully the meetups are worthwhile enough to get up at 3:30 in the morning. So welcome everybody.
If this is your first time watching us on YouTube, please stand up, give us a wave.
And we'll do the clap right now.
So just to highlight a few events that we've got coming up, obviously a lot of in-person things have been cancelled, but there's a few things still worth calling out that's happening around the community at the moment. So DevWorld, probably Australia's best iOS dev conference, has announced that they're going to run this year, but online instead of in person in Melbourne like they typically do. We're a bit light on details at this point still, but it is worth just mentioning it and keeping an eye out on their Twitter page. I'm sure they'll announce more information when the time is ready. It's also worth checking out the Melbourne CocoaHeads meetup. They run similar to us in a similar style with usually similar talks. They run on the second Thursday of the month, so about a week before we normally run. If you enjoy this meetup and you're bored at home during isolations, definitely worth checking out Melbourne CocoaHeads. Provide plenty of great entertainment and learning opportunities too. So definitely check that out. The big one, WWDC is happening. It's next week. This makes this meetup a little bit awkward because normally the June CocoaHeads is one where we can talk about what's happened at the WWDC conference from usually a week or two earlier. This year, we're still waiting for the conference to happen, so it is next week. Hopefully everyone's excited. And yeah, let's keep an eye out on the announcements next week. I did just want to call out one more thing in terms of events. There's a WWDC watch party, which is being organized by the community as a way to get in touch with other devs during the WWDC week, and a way for everyone to hang out and discuss the announcements from the comfort of their own home. So if you're interested in something like that and maybe participating in a bigger community to watch WWDC together and talk about things together online, definitely check out WWDC Watch Party, and the URL is there on the slide as well. So without further ado, let's get started what we're going to do tonight. So we'll kick things off with the hiring and firing section. So if you are looking for work, or if you are, if you know of a place that's hiring, we have a channel on Slack, which is the jobs channel. Feel free to post it in there, and hopefully you can find somebody to fill your role, or you can find some work if you're looking for work. The jobs channel is typically the best place for it at the moment, given the remote circumstances of the meetup. However, we do have somebody who's going to advertise a role in person as you can get on an online stream tonight. So Cochlear is hiring, and Ander from Cochlear is here to just give a brief overview of the role. So I am going to stop talking now and let him talk about the role. The email address, if you'd like to apply, will be on the slide behind him as he talks. So over to you, Ander.
Hey all, Andy here from Cochlear. So hopefully a lot of you have heard of Cochlear before. We're one of the biggest technology success stories in Australia. We help people hear and be heard, developing cochlear implants. But a huge and growing part of what we do is the app ecosystem around that product. It's something that allows people to control their sound processor and control their hearing. And the apps that we're building are doing more and more. And particularly now, as communities shut down due to COVID, telehealth is becoming increasingly important. And while I think there are some companies out there that have slowed down at this time, things have actually sped up at Cochlear. So right now we are looking to expand our app development capability. And we're looking for more iOS as well as Android developers to join us. I feel I can mention Android. There's no frontline heckling me that are going to cause physical harm. Now, projects that we have at Cochlear, we obviously work with custom hardware and communicate that using BLE. Unlike, say, startup IoT roles, security is massively important for us. We pay a lot of attention to protecting the privacy of our customers, our recipients. And on top of that, we care a lot about the technology we use. So we're using Swift since version 1. We even have a project right now that's using Swift UI and Combine, though unfortunately some of our projects do have to support older versions of iOS. But obviously a massive part of working at Cochlear is the feeling of realizing that you're working for a company that's doing something good and helping people. And there is an amazing story behind Cochlear. So look, if you are interested, shoot me an email. The email address is up on the screen, and we'll take it from there. Thanks.
Cool, thanks, Ander. Yep, so just feel free to shoot Ander an email at the email address that's on the slide if you're interested in that role. Yeah, thanks again, Ander. And if anybody wants to advertise a role in future months or wants to get up and give a pitch if they're looking for work, just let me know, let Carl know, let Nikki know. We can make that happen in future months. All right, so what else is on the schedule tonight? We've got a quick roundtable coming up with myself, Nikki, and Carl, and Matt, where we're going to talk a little bit about what we hope to see at WWDC, a little bit of speculation, keep things interesting only a few days out from the conference. Following that, we've got Matt Delves with our only talk of this evening, A Year with Swift UI. Looking forward to that one, especially ahead of presumably some massive Swift UI changes next week. And then following that, we'll have an informal Zoom catch up, completely optional. I'll be posting the link to that Zoom call in the Slack upon concluding the YouTube live stream. So stay tuned for that. The only thing to note there is please don't make that link public. Don't post it on Twitter. Just keep it to the Slack group. That would be awesome. And if you're not in the Slack group, feel free to join before I post that link. So with without further ado, oh, actually, sorry, I had one more slide. July CocoaHeads. So we're always looking for talks. If you want to give the month in review, let us know. If you want to give a talk, let us know. Particularly in July or typically June, but the one immediately following WWDC, I find it's a good month for a lot of shorter lightning talks where people might not have had the time to do a deep dive into the new stuff from WWDC to give a full length talk, but they've done enough playing around with some new APIs that they can give a 5 or 10 minute lightning talk on it. So if any of those interest you following WWDC, please just let me know. And yeah, we'll hopefully have some awesome talks next month about some cool new WWDC APIs. So let's get stuck into the roundtable. Who wants to kick it off? If I can work out how to stop screen sharing.
Well, you're the one with all of the questions, Zach, so.
Okay, now that screen sharing stopped, I can pay attention. All right. So, have you guys checked out the new App Store Connect on mobile? I know it's not WWDC, but I need to talk about this one.
Literally just downloaded it earlier. I checked it out. Look, it looks a bit like a the test flight app within 4 App Store released versions. So yeah, it's nice in the fact that you can see that you immediately see your reviews, etc., all in one place, your app information in one place, and also follow the trends, of course. Like it's a good addition to have that on the iPhone or on the iPad.
But have you seen the redesigned website, which now supports mobile? So you no longer have to scroll for like 3 minutes to find that field on the right side of the screen.
Yeah. So website different from app, which Nikki just mentioned. And the app is usually, I found, about 3 to 4 days behind when everything actually is. But that just might be me as a macOS developer. No one
Always
cares
a few years
about
behind,
the
Matt.
Mac. Hey, we had dark mode first.
You did. I'll give you that. It's about all. Cool. So I think the next point that I had here was what we're hoping to see with SwiftUI, and I'm sure Matt, you have thoughts as probably one of the most prolific SwiftUI developers. But I think I'll get us started with this one. A few, sort of two big ones. For me, navigation has been lacking in SwiftUI until this point. It's really difficult to build a full app and have all your navigation flows handled by SwiftUI at the moment. I know where I've had the choice, at least, to use SwiftUI, I've stuck with UIKit for a lot of navigation things and used SwiftUI to build sort of components of an existing UIKit view, which has worked well, but it would be nice to make the choice to use SwiftUI completely for a certain part of an app. And then the other one, which sort of came to me late today in something that I was doing, is better support for the cursor and things like knowing the cursor position on the screen, as opposed to just having to lay out objects that respond to cursor.
Used it a lot?
Things like that.
You're talking about iPad cursor rather than Mac
Right,
cursor?
sorry, iPad cursor. I haven't done Mac with SwiftUI, yeah. So those are sort of my two things. Anyone else want to contribute there?
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping to see some changes to SwiftUI. I've only recently been really starting with it, starting it actually for a production app right now, which is pretty cool. But there's still a lot missing currently in SwiftUI. Things like inner shadows, etc., for example, are quite hard to do and achieve. I've written my own one, which kind of works, but there's also some problem with a bit of a flash highlight thing going on when you switch from a outer shadow to an inner shadow to select like to show like a press state, for example. Things like that I hope we will see in SwiftUI. Maybe changes to combine.
What do you think's missing in combine, or what do you want added?
It's a very good question. I guess I do. I haven't played around with it that much, but I am wondering or definitely looking forward to having a bit more documentation around it. I feel the documentation is still a bit lacking.
Yeah.
So is it more documentation around how do you write a custom publisher and subscriber, or is it more documentation around how do you use the publishers that Apple provides, say on URL session and stuff like that?
Both. I would love both.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cool.
And it seems
Carl?
fairly easy to write wrappers around Apple APIs, but it'd be really nice to see some good guidance from Apple with integration with their own APIs.
Speaking of guidance from Apple, going back to Swift UI, that's sort of one of the things that I'm hopeful over the next sort of 12 months we'll see more of, because I know when Swift came out, it took a couple of years before the well-established patterns that are often still in use today sort of came to be. And I'm hopeful that with Swift UI, obviously not having a proper way to move around an app and navigate an app with Swift UI has sort of held back architectural things, but I'm hopeful that maybe we'll see some changes that mean people can start having opinions on architecture in Swift UI and things like that. So sort of getting to that point where Swift UI and Combine are a bit more mature and Apple gives some guidance, even if it's not the most useful. If we do get some sort of guide for where we should be looking at things and how we should be treating things, that would be good. And then obviously from there, people in the community will, I imagine, expand upon those ideas and write those blog posts that sort of do change the way we do things and build apps. So that should be pretty cool if we get to that point in the next 12 months as a result of things that are announced next week.
I think the big thing for me with Swift UI is hoping that we get support that is backported to iOS 12, or iOS 13, I mean, that anything that's added on isn't just going to be iOS 14, because
Yes.
I feel very outside on this conversation because I have to support customers that may not have iOS 13 devices.
Of course.
And if we get to the stage where we can drop iOS 12 and we can start using Swift UI, I don't want to be stuck on what we currently have.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Yeah, that's a big issue with anyone adopting Swift UI is they know iOS 13 and macOS Catalina are very limited in what Swift UI can do. But at the same time, if like when the next iteration of Swift UI comes out, Apple being Apple, there's next to no chance it'll be backported. And as much as I'd love to see an equivalent of, say, Android's Jetpack or whatever it is that allows for the backporting, I just don't realistically see Apple doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a shame. I guess we'll find out in a few days.
One can hope.
It's don't we put all our eggs in this one basket and walk away somewhat disappointed sometimes? No, it's all right. So obviously first WWDC at home. How are we going to be spending the week? Let's chat a little bit about our plans for WWDC week.
I guess first, who's staying up till 3 a.m.?
Waking up or staying up? That's the big question.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I think the phrase for us in Australia is now no sleep during dub, as we have to wrestle with time zone differences plus working during the week. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Hopefully most of us can at least watch the keynote live.
I think I'm going to sleep first and then wake up.
Yeah.
I just have to be able to sleep at 8 p.m. or something like that. But we do get some time from work, as iOS developers to spend on dub this year. So that's pretty good. Given that they don't really have to send anyone to San Jose this year, it cuts down the costs heap. So we're going to use this time as training, which is pretty cool because we'll be able to do the first day watching the keynote and then watching the State of the Union. and then spend 2 days on videos that we really, sessions that we really want to see, and have some discussions about that with our team as well. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. About the cheapest training a company will get, so it's pretty awesome. Don't have to
Sounds
send
very
anyone
similar
anywhere.
to us as well. Majority of the team is planning on being up at 3 a.m. to watch the keynote, and I've been pushing everybody to push commentary onto, or to join in on the CocoaHeads Slacks for discussion, to get more of that feedback from the community, find out everybody's feeling about what's been announced as well. It's very easy to get trapped in your own bubble when you work at a company where you don't get a lot of interaction outside of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think that's going to be like the online community is going to be even more important this year, given that everybody's at home and everybody's sort of going to want an outlet for discussing what they're watching and what they're doing throughout the week. So it's awesome. All right, before
And
we
very similar to Nikki. Sorry, we're going to have a vote on the most popular, or what we think are the most popular sessions each day, and try and prioritize some shared viewing across those as well.
Nice, should be a good week.
I'm actually really excited to have everybody at work going to Dub this year. It's the first time it's ever happened.
Yeah.
Everyone's a winner.
First and last, maybe, but no, it's good. I wonder if it'll set a precedent for how, like, the sort of the standard of live streaming and online forums and session and online labs throughout the week, even when it goes back to in person. I guess we'll see. Does anyone have any wild cards? Anything that they're hoping for, that they're thinking might happen?
Fancy new OS for mystery hardware.
And what might that hardware be, Matt?
I do not know.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a mystery.
Gossip alerts.
No, nice.
Glasses.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the year. I said so last year, and it wasn't the year, so I'm hoping for this year.
Yeah.
And I'm still hoping for something public built out of Buddy Build.
Yes, that's a big one. Yeah, me too. I think it makes a lot of sense if the eventual move to have Xcode on an iPad is a thing. Being able to offload a lot of the build process and a lot of the dependency management and things like that to something quote unquote in the cloud would be awesome. So we'll see.
Reedy's voting on macOS Alcatraz.
Yeah.
I'm personally in the macOS Death Valley camp.
Oh, I think
Both
I'm
quite
with you there. Like, considering you've got the Harley Davidson t-shirt on, or hoodie on, it's like quite appropriate.
An Xcode version that finally fixes everything.
The magic version.
You mean Xcode 3.2 that came after Xcode 4? Yep, that one fixed everything.
Matt, saw you tweeting about that today. Best Xcode ever.
Oh yeah, still my favorite Xcode.
Nice. All right. Anyone else want to say anything, or should we get into Matt's talk on SwiftUI?
Probably only other thing worth pointing out was the comment in the Slack that sign up starts at 11 p.m. each evening for labs.
Oh, okay. That's our time?
That's our time.
Cool.
So with the labs, you need to make sure that you get a slot and then are awake for the slot.
Oh, that's so rough.
And labs will be very hotly contested. So my plan for the weekend is prepare any and all questions well written so that I'm sure I'll be able to get an answer for it.
Nice. Good job, Matt. Be so prepared. No, it's good. Yeah, I'll have to have a think about questions and things over the weekend. Haven't gotten that far yet. But cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully people enjoyed that. Let's, Matt, are you ready to start your talk on SwiftUI?
I guess so.
As ready as you'll ever be?
I'm not sure how I could get any more ready. So,
Good job.
okay, let's hit this share screen button.
All right.
Host disabled attendee
Oh,
screen sharing.
sorry.
Whoa, whoa.
Is it advanced sharing? All participants. There we go.
Cool.
Try
Yep,
again.
let's blame that one on Nikki.
Sorry about that.
What this Zoom stuff has changed. Okay. We should have tested this yesterday.
Probably should have.
Yep.
People probably don't want to see me sing, but I can start singing if this takes too long.
Okay. Desktop one. Share.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey,
Cool.
awesome.
All right, take it away.
Okay.
Matt.
Yay. How
Take the
is
stage.
everyone? I'll have to do the standard Tim Cook. Good morning. Good morning. It has been too long since we've heard Tim go good morning. So I'm having dub withdrawals. I would have been to and come back from San Jose by this time. So yeah, fun times. But this year, everything's going to be remote. And what I have to share with you all tonight is what my experience of working with SwiftUI on a range of different apps for the past year. So there's been a macOS app in the mix. There's been a couple of iOS apps, and just sharing with you all what's been happening and how it's been going. Now, I do have Slack open on my fancy iPad Pro with its fancy new Magic Keyboard. So if you've got any questions that you want to fire off during the evening, please feel free to jump in the Meetup channel and ask away, and I'll see about answering them as I get a chance. So to begin with, hi everyone, my name is Matt. I am an iOS and a macOS developer. Everywhere on the internet where I tend to have a bit of a presence, I am at Matt Delves, so that's Twitter, Slack. No one cares about Facebook, so I'm not on there, and all of the usual places. My main project that I spend a lot of my time on is Domestique app, which is a cycling app. And like many others at the moment, I am currently looking for work. So I am a contract/freelance iOS and macOS developer, and I am looking for work. So to begin with, let's talk about the dream of declarative UI. What is it all about? Why are people raving about it, wanting it to be the future? So Apple defines it as the following. It, being SwiftUI, uses a declarative syntax, so you can simply state what your user interface should do. For example, you can write that you want a list of items consisting of text fields. Then describe alignment, font, and color for each field. Your code is simpler and easier to read than ever before, saving you time and maintenance. Yay. So what does this boil down to? It boils down to you are defining your UI from your data. So you're not responding to UI events like your view did load, your view will load, view will disappear, or a rotation event or anything like that. You're saying, here is my data in a descriptive or declarative way and present the user interface and interaction from it. And how does your device, being a Mac, a watch, an iPhone, an iPad, an Apple TV, a mystery device coming up soon, who knows? How does that all update itself? It updates itself based on new data. So you're not saying, hey, view, go and update. You're going, this particular bit of data, which is defined in the application state, go and update. It is a new value, so you therefore need to redraw the UI. Now, how has this played out in the past year? First and foremost, everyone has an opinion. Being the new cool thing, everyone has something to say, something to put forward, an idea, a way of solving a problem. And for every particular problem you encounter, you can get about 20 to 30 different responses, different actual bits and pieces of information as you go along. Now, a lot of the inspiration for how to go about solving problems has come from the web. And this is either a good thing or a bad thing, in that it can be a good thing by the web has dealt with declarative interfaces, declarative ways of thinking, functional ways of thinking for a long time, and has defined a series of patterns that are appropriate. Another way of addressing it all is thinking of this idea of composable architecture, which has been put forward by the point3.co people. If you know their work, they do a lot of video tutorials about how do you do functional programming and functional concepts in Swift. And more recently, they've been developing this idea of a composable architecture to use in Swift UI. And this is one of the more innovative, more expressive ways of defining how data will flow from your view via a user interaction to a new state. It's pretty cool. Recommend you check it out. But my favorite for how to address things has just been plain old Swift objects. You don't need any wrappers, frameworks, boilerplate. All you're doing is you're going, this object, this type contains the data for the view. It is, when it's declared in the view, it is declared with a property wrapper being observed object, and therefore changes which are published via Combine will cause an update to the view. Problem there is if you have one God object or deity object or massive object, however you wish to describe it, as being there and the central source of truth, everything all the time when there's the smallest change will be updated, and therefore you will get a lot of redraws and stuff. And composable architecture tries to solve that to a degree. So how have people been using Swift UI, or how have I tried to solve it in the projects I've been working on? For my app Domestique, everything has been Swift UI, meaning that Swift UI from top to bottom is in control and responsible for how things has been working. And I found this works really, really well. Another approach is when you have a hybrid, that is some things in UIKit, some things in Swift UI, a bit of a shared responsibility, a bit of back and forth, based on how you want to go about presenting things on the screen. Again, one of the projects I've worked with for a consultancy was using this approach. For some screens, they were simple enough to get away with Swift UI. For others, the product required a bit different interaction, a bit more UIKit friendly interaction, and therefore it was done in UIKit. And then there's sort of the other end of that spectrum, which is you just have it for, say, a table view cell or just a random view within a view controller and using it as different screens. All of these approaches are good. All of these approaches solve problems and allow you to work with SwiftUI amongst an existing app or a new app or whatever it is you're dealing with. So over the year, what are some of the changes that I've experienced? What are some of the changes that I've seen, and how have I been able to address them? A big one has been, say you have a list. Now in SwiftUI, list is synonymous with table view and is in fact backed by a table view. So on the Mac, it is backed by an NS table view. On iOS, it is backed by a UI table view. Pretty sure that's the case. Interface debugger will be able to show it, so will reveal, but reveal's not for the Mac. Anyway, so with a list, you have some form of cell reuse, which is really, really good. But one of the big problems is, say you've put 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 items into the data that is driving that list. And then you've started searching that list. So you've gone from something being over 20,000 items down to maybe 30 or 40. How do you actually handle that in a performant and meaningful way? Some people have taken the different approaches. One of them is to just discard everything and draw again. If you relied on a lot of the standard ways that SwiftUI tries to handle it, it ends up being pretty bad, and you can lock up the main thread for a couple of minutes. So this is one of the things you need to be aware of and try to solve. Large drawing areas. If you're drawing a graph, say a line graph that has a large number of data points in a scroll view, if you're not aware that the backing for that scroll view is in fact a metal object, you might not start to think that a very large metal canvas is in fact very, very slow. So if you have something that's like 30,000 points wide, it will in fact crash because it goes beyond the size that a metal canvas can be drawn at. So another thing to work with. Core data. Core data, again, I love it. I use it all the time where I can, but in SwiftUI, because of the way SwiftUI tries to draw its views and have views that are very lightweight and discardable, when using it with something that is backed by core data, you will find that it will fault the core data objects way too eagerly. And as a result, you put a lot of load on core data, you're doing a lot more fetching than you should, and everything slows down. Image manipulations are, again, something that I've come across where if you say have a very, very large image and you do like a resize, a scale to fit, and then add a border, add a mask, and a couple of other things, you're in fact doing all of these operations on a new image, which means you're loading all of the values into that, all of the data into that image, maybe 5, 6, 7 times. And that can be very, very slow if you're dealing with a very, very large image. Another one that tends to trip up a lot of people is this idea of what's my size. So by that, I mean, how do you know the size something should be? The size something like its width, its height, and stuff like that. In UIKit, in AppKit, you have auto layout to handle that, and auto layout works really well. But in SwiftUI, you have layout attributes and stuff like that, which try to be a lot smarter about it, causing it to just have some weird issues and inconsistencies around what something's size should be. You also have this idea of close but not quite, where you present something but it just doesn't quite look right by default. It looks maybe a little bit more flat, a little bit less interactive, particularly if you've got a button in there. Another big thing to be aware of is the idea of the geometry reader. So a lot of people rely on geometry reader to just fall back to the idea of providing a fixed width and height for everything, or getting the size of its parent and sizing it to that and stuff like that. And that's the wrong use of geometry reader. From my experience, there are only two areas where geometry reader should be used. That is in drawing a shape. Specifically, I've used geometry reader a lot in drawing a graph. It's quite a good solution. Or say if you've got an SVG image that you've manually parsed, interpreted, and need to present, geometry reader again provides you a way of knowing what size and what manipulations and transforms to apply to it. Geometry reader, or more specifically the geometry proxy, allows you to get the safe area insets as well. So if you've got a view and you want to make sure that it is offset from the safe area inset, this will allow you to do that. But really, all of this is only in very, very limited situations do you need to be using it. You shouldn't be using this just to fall back on standard UIKit behaviors. Solving the search problem. So this is getting back to going from a very, very large list down to a very, very small list. The way I've been able to solve this is by going from a list that is, say, 20,000. When you tap on the field to search, it then clears that list as its first operation. Therefore, when you start typing, when it hits the threshold of it being a significant search, it will start to populate the data into that list. Another option, and something that is very complementary, is use core data. Core data works magnificently well with SwiftUI because you can use this thing called NS predicate. And NS predicate is your friend because you can use it to create a very complex search term and apply that search term to an array. And a lot of people, when they start to think of doing functional programming, will have, say, 3 or 4 filter commands chained together, which it looks easy to read and you can understand it, but you're actually looping over the array or a subset of that array 4 times. And not only could your logic be slightly different, based on how you're handling those, the terms within that closure of applying to filter. Yeah, it becomes a bit messy when you try to be too functional with this stuff. Just have a predicate, and apply that predicate to core data on your fetched result. It will do a single pass for your search and display it, and it's all good. So lean heavily on core data, lean heavily on the stuff Apple has provided you, and you will do well. The large canvas issues. So with my app Domestique being a cycling app, there's a lot of data involved, and trying to draw a power graph for, say, a 5-hour bike ride means you're drawing a very, very large thing. So way to solve it, break it apart. Break it apart into, say, 200 point wide or whatever suits different values, and that way you're drawing multiple canvases in the scroll view instead of one large canvas and causing performance issues or a crash or something like that. Working with core data. So I said before that things get faulted way too soon, and this is very true. So with core data, you need to know and understand your model. You need to know and understand when it's retrieving values and why it's retrieving values. So say you've got a list and the list is displaying a title, but in that, for each of those list items, it's got a navigation view, and that navigation view then has a detail view. So for each of the list items, it is creating a detail view to go along with it, because that's the next thing that it gets pushed to. So in that case, everything that is in your detail view gets faulted along with the stuff in your list, and it causes performance issues. So make sure you are modeling and displaying and showing your data appropriately. If you're using a transformable value, so going from, say, a binary data object that was saved from JSON to a complex type, each time you need to extract that, you have to go through JSON decoder and stuff like that. Again, can become very slow, even though it is a very, very convenient thing to work with from a programming standpoint. Everything gets faulted. I've said this numerous times. When things get accessed, they get faulted, and it just causes strain on your device. You also need to know when your views are created. So as I said before, the destination of a navigation view, that gets created when the list item gets displayed. It's slightly counterintuitive, but that's how things work. Working with images. I covered a lot of this before. Be careful of the size of the image. So if you've got something that's, say, suitable for a 4K desktop, you don't want to be applying a resize and then a scale and then a border and then a drop shadow and maybe a few other manipulations to it, because you're working with a very large file and then transforming it 6, 7, or 8 times. It slows everything down and makes the responsiveness of your view a lot worse. Did I mention this? Know when your views are created. This is very, very important. SwiftUI treats views as disposable things. So it will create and throw away views very rapidly, very quickly. So your views need to be lightweight, and they need to be displayable within a short amount of time. Just going to leave this slide here for a bit and take a drink. SwiftUI is slow. and this can be counterintuitive, but if you're dealing with large amounts of data, if you're dealing with things that need to load from a database or something like that, SwiftUI can be very, very slow. So be aware of this, know how to tackle it, know how to deal with it. Now, what does the future look like? If I was to fast forward to what is our Tuesday morning, when all of the new stuff is made known, is presented to us, what do I think is going to be shown? I think we're going to get a lot more expressiveness in Swift as a language. And as a result, we will be able to describe our user interface a lot more natively and a lot more fluidly. I'm not too sure how things like multiple trailing closures will look or will work with SwiftUI. I know with UI view.animate with duration and things like that, the multiple trailing closures will work well. SwiftUI, a bit up in the air. What we will get, hopefully, is advances to View Builder. We'll be able to use guardlet, iflet, and hopefully even switch in SwiftUI statements. That would be really, really nice. Allow us to be a lot more expressive about what's going on. More UI components. So we've already got HStack and VStack, and we can build some fairly complex layouts using them, which is really nice. But what we're lacking is more of a grid layout, more of a flow layout, where things start going horizontal and then wrap at a certain point onto the next line. Something like that would be amazing. Will we see something that's almost like compositional layout in SwiftUI? Hard to say. It would be very nice. I would definitely love to make use of it, play around with it. That would be really cool. I would also love for things like all of the Siri views that you get by default for adding Siri intent and stuff like that. All of that in SwiftUI would be amazing, because at the moment in SwiftUI, when you try to interact with those views, there is a lot of boilerplate you need to work through. MapKit, again, you need to have it wrapped in either a UI view controller representable or an NS view representable in order to use it. So being able to have a native SwiftUI implementation of a map would be amazing. Better interactions with Apple frameworks, much more the same of what I've been talking about. That would be amazing. I really, really would love it. And that is all that I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. A few really good points there about SwiftUI that I'd overlooked when we were discussing things before. If anyone's got questions for Matt, he is in and around the Slack group, so I'm sure he'll be happy to answer them there. That concludes what we had scheduled for this evening. So thank you to everyone for joining. Hope everybody has a great week next week and enjoys WWDC as much as possible. If you want to stick around, I'll be posting a link to a Zoom meeting in the Slack in a few minutes time. So feel free to join, and yeah, if you want to stick around for some conversations. Otherwise, have a good month, and we'll catch you probably remotely again next month. Goodbye. Thanks, Matt.
See y'all.
Bye, everyone.